Welcome to another episode of Start, Grow and Monetize Your Podcast with myself, Alex Chisnell, and my good friend and co-host, James Burt. We are talking about how to discover your podcast. We're talking keywords. We are talking SEO. We are talking all of those kinds of things. Starting out with a podcast or even revisiting your podcast and trying to do this in a more strategic and growth-fueled way.
Wow.
Where would you go? Where would you start?
I'm just staggered by growth-fueled way.
Because I'm fueled by these protein
Stop,
drinks
you're not sponsored by them. Put it down for the love of God, man.
Sorry.
So what a lot of people don't understand, there's multiple ways to get found as a podcast on the podcast platforms. But whilst there are multiple ways, there's not that many ways. You can't do paid ads on most of the platforms, which I'm quite surprised about still.
I know.
There's obviously curated categories, but you've got to be doing quite a lot of numbers to get into those curated categories. Also, you've got to know somebody at Apple or Spotify. Yeah. Frankly, I'd love to think that it's a democratized ecosystem. It's not. It's about who you're friends with. Same over at Spotify. And it just is what it is. But what will help? So, for example, if you go into your podcast app of choice right now, and if you type in the word motivation, of course, you're going to get shows that got motivation in the title that will pop up probably first and foremost. But you will also, within that list, so if you are looking for a motivation podcast, there will be shows in that list that don't have the word motivation in the title. So the question then becomes, well, where are those keywords? Now, we don't know from Apple, Spotify and other platforms where they actually rank the SEO phrases from.
Nobody's speaking.
Because nobody knows. But we know that it works. So your opportunity with this is to basically to pack keywords into as many places as possible. Now,
in a
non-black hat sort of spammy fashion. It's got to still read well, because ultimately, and look at what other people are doing, look at best practice within your space and your sector. But you don't want it to be just like keyword, because people are going to read those show notes. They are going to read that show title. And even within your show description in general, that is available to be viewed in certain platforms, and it depends on how much you can see on it. So you want to have those keywords and phrases in there, but you don't want it to be spammy. You've got to think of it almost like mini blogs. Like, how would you get a blog to rank? How would you get how would you optimize a page on a website, for example? And that is by utilizing those keywords and phrases. So a couple of great places to start with is to optimize the episode title and the description. So what you want to do, again, like you would for any sort of blog or any sort of ranking of a web page, is look, and we've had some assistance here with this, use clear, specific keywords related to your episode's topic to attract search traffic while keeping the language engaging to entice the listeners. Now, I think that's really key there. Do not, if you have got a podcast that is not about motivation, but you think motivation will rank well, don't put loads of stuff about motivation in there, because ultimately the show title, the description is almost the promise. If you don't deliver on the promise with the content, then people will just bounce off your show, which is ultimately not going to do you much
which
of a
is
favour
going to
anyway.
really struggle with your average duration of your podcast.
Exactly, which is
people will jump right off it.
Yeah, and that's going to become, I think, more and more important. If you hear what the industry's talking about at the moment, obviously you can look at like how many downloads you got or how many streams you got, but that's basically people coming to the beginning part of the episode. What they haven't had traditionally within podcasting, but I think someone's going to come up with it shortly, is what's that drop-off rate? Like, you get the retention levels on YouTube channels, but you don't get that on podcasts. But I think as it starts to develop, and there's a podcast 2.0 revolution happening at the moment, as that becomes more important, I think those things will help platforms like Apple, Spotify and others that will no doubt pop up. It's going to help them to rank shows based on what is actually popular, not what drives a load of potentially fudged traffic to listen to the first 5 seconds of an episode, basically. Yeah. So one of the ways, again, to test this out, what are the words and the phrases? And we've talked about this before, and we talk about it loads in Pod School. Be clear and definitive on what your brand actually is. What's the traffic that you want? Who is the audience that you want? Now, you might be sitting there going, well, I just want a massive audience as possible. I just want everybody. I want to be the next Joe Rogan. Okay, fine. But who within that audience do you actually need to get for your podcast to be a success? And then think about within the brand, what would be those optimized keywords and phrases like you would for any other brand or business or any other form of marketing. And then make sure you're putting those keywords and phrases into episode titles and descriptions.
Yeah, and Mr. Jupiter, that is ChatGPT to you and me, is your friend here.
100%.
What is the other site? Neil Patel, one of Neil Patel's
Ubersuggest.
Ubersuggest
is one.
Yep.
Google Trends is another one. So once you know what words you want to rank for, you can then utilize things like Google Trends and find out what is already trending. You can look at Ubersuggest. You can look at what is it within Google? So there's trends and there's also the keyword phrase
Insights.
in there. So it might be insights.
Yeah.
So when you put in the phrases that you want to rank for, it will show you the how much search traffic it gets.
Correct.
And it'll also give you a bunch of other suggested things.
Yeah.
Another thing that I think is really worth doing is going just onto Google. So type in that word into Google
see what
because
comes.
it then auto-fills after.
Yeah.
Same on YouTube. And I think it's a really good hack because obviously people who are going onto YouTube to consume content in a certain way. Google's slightly different. They might be, motivation, they might be looking for a book on motivation. They might be looking for a podcast. They might be looking for a movie. But whereas on YouTube, they're looking for videos on that specific subject. So again, type in the first bit of your keyword phrase into YouTube and then it'll pop up because obviously it's a Google product, very much like a Google search. It will show you the next sort of 10 things that it also searches for. And then again, you could utilize that and put that into your episode titles and your show descriptions. And also, and this is really important, the SEO side of your podcast starts before you do the episode title and the description. You can actually include that within your show description overall. So if you are brand new to podcasting, if you haven't yet launched your podcast, make sure you go and check out Pod School, because in chapter 1 of our free training, which is there in Pod School, we talk about how to utilize a brand, how to come up with the keywords and phrases. And then we talk about why that's so important, because the platforms that you utilize, whether it be Apple, Spotify, they pull the data from a third-party platform, which again, don't get too confused about it, don't get worried about the tech because it's actually relatively simple. But on those platforms, whether it be Libsyn or Buzzsprout or Podbean or Captivate, you can put a bunch of keywords and phrases in the description, which will help you to rank. Categorically will help you to rank. I see it loads on LinkedIn. Oh, it doesn't work. It absolutely does work.
Yeah.
I've launched 180 shows. You've launched about the same. So between us, we've done about 400 shows. The ones that are optimized with good show descriptions will rank better.
Yeah.
It's just that simple.
And look, still, as it stands, something like around 50% of podcasts are still found through organic search. So therefore, if your podcast cannot be found organically, you're potentially losing 50% of your audience. So the things that you can control are the title of the podcast itself, putting your main keyword or one of the keywords in there may not work. You might already have your podcast and you don't want to change the title. That's fair enough. But the other opportunities, just to kind of round up, are the description of your show, the title of your episode, the description for the episode, the show notes, and then you've also now have on Spotify the third method, which is that they're automatically, through their AI tool, pulling different segments of your video if you've gone down the route of having Spotify for podcasters host your video, and they can be found through organic search as well. So control the things that you can control, get super tactical with it, and come up with those keywords. Just do that exercise once, and if you have a business, maybe you've already been through this exercise. Or if it's a personal brand, maybe you've been through this exercise because you've done it for your website. You're already going to have keywords. You're already going to have that set out on what keywords people are typing when they want to find you online. So just extend that and put those in the back end of the hosting platform that you've got for your audio podcast, and also then for YouTube for your video podcast.
Just one final point, because I've only just started playing around with myself, actually 7 years into the game, is transcripts. When me and you started, transcripts weren't really a thing. You might have the odd random podcast platform that would allow you to upload transcripts. Because of searchability and because of accessibility now being more and more important, transcripts are becoming a definite and vital way for you to help to optimize your SEO. And most platforms, again, the RSS feeds, whether it be a Libsyn or a Captivate or a Buzzsprout, they're allowing you to do transcripts. Now, if you've done an hour-long podcast, you're thinking, bloody hell, but how am I going to... I'm not going to sit there and type that out, and I'm not going to transcribe it. When we started out, you had no option. You had to go to like a rev.com and... Do you remember that?
Yes, no, I do. We tried everything, Google as well. Yeah, bloody expensive.
So if you did a 60-minute episode, you'd have $60 worth of cost just to do the transcript. But these days, there's so many good tools. If you're editing in Premiere Pro or a lot of the audio platforms, they will actually pump you out a transcript, which are pretty accurate. If you're not using Premiere Pro, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you're new to editing audio and you're new to editing video, a lot of the video softwares will pump out a transcript as well as the audio platforms. But if you are not using tools that are that clever, or you're doing a more basic version of it, there's a great platform called Otter.ai.
AI.
We should have got a bloody affiliate link, shouldn't we, for that?
Let's do it.
Maybe by the time this comes out, we have. Go to Otter. They pay us some dosh. Hopefully. But it's a really, really good platform. It's like 98% accurate. It struggles sometimes with accents.
Yeah.
Doesn't like Scottish accents. It does not like Scottish accents.
Really,
Absolutely. Otter does not like a good, strong Scottish accent, baby.
Not bad. Do you do a lot of Scottish podcasts?
I do a lot of Scottish podcasts.
Do
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. I just do I'm a tribute band to Duncan Ballantyne on the weekends.
Wonderful. Thank you for that.
But yeah, Otter.ai is like $10 a month or something like that, and you can have like 6,000 minutes of transcribe time. You upload the MP3 to it, and it will pump out a transcript. Again, you can download it as an XRT file, not an XRT, that's not a thing. An SRT file. You can download it as a PDF. You can download it as a text edit file. So whatever platform, so some of them want it in different formats.
Yep.
You can download it, transcribe it, and stick it up there. And again, if you're going, well, that sounds like too much hard work, but these are the things that might make a 1%, 5% difference to your podcast. And if 1% of more people can find you because of a simple thing that costs you $10 a month, is it not worth doing?
Yeah, and you might not have the 30+ team of a diary of a CEO to do that. But even if you're looking at it once a month and going, what is the one thing I can change in my podcast that might increase things by 1%? That's 12% in a year. Or if you did that one thing a week, guess what that works out at?
52?
Yes!
Fantastic. Maths and podcast entertainment here on the show.
Have an apple.
Thank you very much. If you've enjoyed this episode, please feel free, share this with somebody else who we're not bothered about, like you tagging everybody that you know on Instagram or your TikTok, because we know that this is a niche podcast. But if there's one other person that you know who's looking to start, grow, and monetize their podcast, they're launching a podcast, maybe they're not getting the results they want for their podcast, share this episode with a friend. And if you want more details, this subject and other subjects like it is covered in Pod School. You can click the link in the show notes now. It's completely free to join. We are committed to making it the #1 platform in the world for serious podcast and content makers. So we will see you over there. If you want to find out more about how to SEO your powerful podcast, that is a place for you. We will see you on the next episode. Ta-da!
Ta-da!